Well, this is the news that you need to be hearing, folks. I'm going to be sharing with you what in the world is going on, like I got on my screen back here. The news cycle, you know, ought to be something where you read it, and then you can see in the Bible what's happening, and then you pray accordingly. Well, we're looking at a period of time of global conflict. Here's what Jesus says. You're going to see in Matthew chapter 24. Verse 6, you're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not frightened, for those things must take place, but the end is not yet. In other words, see that you be not frightened. So you're not hearing fear in me. What you're hearing is the agitation that the church is the only power that God has vested his authority in on the earth that can pray and deal with these forces. But how much of your prayer strategies are actually getting clear to you? I'm talking about clear prophetic prayer strategies. For instance, what happened in the last 48 hours? Now, what I'm telling you now is going to be evergreen for a month, even if you get this. Today is the 4th. Whenever you see this, June 4th, you can see it on the 8th. Won't matter. The story is going to be, you probably haven't heard these things. I went to Korea, South Korea, prophetically, to warn them that they were about to fall and collapse into communist China's hands. The 6th largest global economy, our one democracy alliance, where 50% of the people are Christian and aren't engaged in politics. The classic American virus got into them. Well, we don't get involved with electoral politics. It's not, the kingdom of God doesn't come on Air Force One. What dummies. Jesus is the ruler of all the realms of earth, and to the degree that the church does not go forth and exercise its influence as salt and light as a restraining force, tyranny and darkness will take over, and it will eventually come after you. So, I warned them. I went over there and I said, you need to have your version of a MAGA movement. You've got to get your churches, nice they're up there on Prayer Mountain praying for reunification with North Korea. Well, there's going to be a reunification when North Korea takes you over. How's that? You need to be raising up right now your Charlie Kirks and your Steve Bannons, your youth evangelists that are going out to mobilize young people, because the college campuses in South Korea were taken over by the same left-wing lunacy of our woke enterprise in the West. All of that went over there, and it mingled itself with its socialistic, communistic, Marxist, utopian version of the world. And you know what they've done? They've been able to sell communist China now as the ruler. And so they've got a guy who just got elected who's working with China. China just congratulated him. And you know what China told him? Go slow in negotiating with the United States. Because by midterms, Trump will be out of power, they'll be impeaching him, and China will be ruling the world. Bet you didn't hear that in your news. Go slow, South Korea. And so the puppet master, Lee, who is now the president of South Korea, bolstered in by the Marxist movement of the leftists that took over their government, is saying, we want to have a closer relationship with Beijing. And we're going to go slow with the United States. Oh, what does that mean when you have the 6th largest economy in the world, the restraining power of democracy in the Asia-Pacific Rim, falling to communist China? So what China's doing is it's doing its Belt and Road Initiative. It's going around. It's not coming to the table to meet with Trump. It plans on. They will let their people eat grass before and they'll put up with a year of death, and you'll never hear about it in the news. They're a totalitarian regime, and they'll bring America down to its knees. And so Donald Trump now is facing this South Korea collapsing to the land. And the only good news is the Financial Times of London gives this ridiculous headline, a sweeping victory. It was only 49% of the vote. In South Korea, I said, you better get your Christian leaders together, your business leaders together, your Christians together, and you better get your young people raised up on the campuses, and you better get your independent journalism. They'll try to shut it down, but you got enough freedom now. You better get your own war room broadcast going, because you've got to muscle up the resistance against the communist collapse of your country. Because, you see, I think the vote was fraudulent, because it's so much like the United States. I mean, their story is so much like us 4 years ago. Kind of gives me hope in this little way. They only won by 49% of the vote, which is probably like 40, maybe 46% of the vote, factor in fake ballots. 49% of the vote means half the country is going, what? What? Who is he again? Who is Lee? Relationship with China? What? North Korea? What? It takes us a while to wake up. Took us a while. Come on. Trump looked like an extremist, hate monger, white Christian nationalist. Talking about the Muslims coming through, ban on Muslims. Then you find out you got 10 million illegals that flooded your border, 20 million over the last 20 years, and you haven't found out yet what came through that is actually militia intelligent that got in from Iran, North Korea, China, and other countries. You want to get the return of the lion, because my premise is that the lion will roar. I believe that God's going to roar against this stuff, but you got to understand what the roar is all about, what the roar of rumors of war. The rumors of war and the roar are related to each other, because Jesus is not unengaged. He's the Lord of the nations, and there's going to be a global awakening. There is an outpouring of God's Spirit, and nations are going to be visited by God. Already in Poland, they just had an election. And a Christian got elected who said, no on the abortion issue, no on same-sex marriage. We're going to return to our Christian roots as a nation. Whoa, you bet you didn't hear that. Same thing in Hungary, same thing in El Salvador, something's happening in Argentina. There are nations rising up like wheat, and the tares are rising up at the same time. Habakkuk says in my first chapter of my book on the return of the lion, behold, I work a work in your day, Habakkuk says, that you wouldn't believe if someone was to declare it to you. And it starts with this. God is raising up leaders in nations, and leaders in nations that are going to be creating alignments so that either righteousness or unrighteousness is going to proliferate. And righteous nations will begin to rise up. And those nations that are going to be characterized as not persecuting the people of God, those that will stand with truth, those countries that will silence the Christians and lock them up, warning you right now, that's all part of the global beast system being set up, and there's resistance that's going to be there for a period of time as sheep nations rise. Nations that are sovereign nations. For those of you who don't like sheep language, sovereign nations. Nations that don't plan on being assimilated by China in its one belt, one road policy. Nations that don't want to be one caliphate with a jihad mentality like Iran wants or that Turkey would like to lead. You're dealing with Iran, China, and Russia, principalities, and in our own country, we have our own sabotage network, which would like to see an economic collapse, and Ocasio-Cortez rioting on the streets, free Gaza, between their hatred of Jews and their hatred of capitalism and free enterprise. The collapse of the West would be virtually guaranteed if it wasn't for the fact that God intervened and raised up rulers that are actually trying to resist us. We're going to pray for those rulers before this broadcast is over. So here's what you got. We're looking at, remember my thesis. My thesis is that if you can't read the news and then tie it into the Bible and know how to pray, then you're deficient. You're deficient in terms of knowing what to focus on, what is really going on that you should be paying attention to. So here, you've got China, which now is trying to take over South Korea with their new proxy leader, who is a Chinese plant, as far as I'm concerned, working with an agenda to bring South Korea into orbit with China. And the only hope that we have is that 50% of the country didn't vote for him, and now they're going to wake up. We got to pray that his experiment in communism by degrees so falls apart that there's a massive pushback and the guy is out of office. Unfortunately, how long does he have? Like 5 years he's going to be there? That's not good, folks. So China is playing hardball with the United States. So economically speaking, Satan wants to do two things. He wants a global economic collapse, starting with the United States, and he wants limited thermonuclear war. He wants conflict so that there's a cry for peace, peace. He wants to accelerate the collapse of the West and the unification of the world around the old oligarchs, the Davos crowd, the rich crowd, the rulers of the nations. But it's not the time for that. I lay out the timing for that right here in this book. There is a time when the world will come together into a collapsed one world government. But first comes the outpouring of the Spirit of God. You cannot preach the gospel and go around the world and see a period of harvest, and like Psalm 2 says, where the rulers say, we've got to stop that movement. You see, we're not yet there where these nations are saying that the church and the liberation of nations has got to be stopped by this gospel alliance with this movement that's global. No. You see, the return of the lion predicates on the fact that the world rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, because God is going to pour out his Spirit and raise up strong sovereign nations and rulers, and the world system is going to want to reject that and push back, but we're not there yet. All right, look, folks, I'm trying to share with you why it is that you can read the news with one hand and the Word of God in the other and know how to pray, because Jesus is moving among the nations. And I have to pause right now at this segment because we're doing shorter segments in media, but I'm going to be back again in our next broadcast because we've got to cover exactly what Jesus is doing in the nations. And get this book, LanceWallnau.com/line, your gift of any amount. You can pay whatever you want. Call 1-800-910-6349 because we're talking about how to intercede and discern this crisis moment we're in the United States, because it is a crisis moment and it's all coming to a convergence. We'll see you again on the next broadcast. Jesus is returning. His administration is a lion. He's coming back as a ruler and a judge. That's part of what the tension is about this fresh manifestation of what's going on the earth. A lot of Christians are used to Jesus, the redemptive Jesus. He's still redemptive Jesus, but he's shaking things up. Want you to find out about this for your gift of any amount. I wrote the book so it's easy to read in one sitting. LanceWallnau.com/lion. Or you can call 1-800-910-6349. And in it, I talk about the 7 steps of what's happening in the Middle East right now and what Jesus is doing as a Jew ruling upon the throne of David, the Lion of Judah, and why anti-Semitism is on the rise and how the people of God will deal with it. All that's in here. LanceWallnau.com/lion. Your gift of any amount.
Call 1-800-910-6349 or visit LanceWallnau.com/lion. With your gift of any amount, you'll receive this prophetic resource. The lion is roaring. Are you listening?
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.